Welcome
My haircut looks
one. Welcome all. My wife said her hair looks kind of crazy, so if you can
Yes.
comment, let her know if it does or not. But all right, you guys, I have something to do soon, so we're going to get right into it. God bless you, keep you. May you have eyes that see, ears that hear, and a heart to understand from the Lord as His Spirit rests upon you, so that we can get to the mysteries or meat. Let's say we'll get to the meat and uncover the mysteries of the Bible. We're starting in 2 Samuel chapter 11, and you guys should be familiar with what we're about to read. So let's check it out. Okay. So verse 1 of this chapter, can you see?
Yes.
Oh, mind you, I'll say this by the way. My mother-in-law, my second mother, is visiting us. She's here in the studio with us, all the way back there. You can say hey or something.
Hey, everybody!
So yeah, she's blessing us with her presence.
Thank you.
So here we go. Verse 1 says, Then it happened. Actually, before
yeah.
verse 1, just look at the title, you guys. I hate this title.
Plot twist.
Bathsheba, David's great sin. There should be a colon here, but they have a
It's
comma.
crazy.
Like this was a real sentence. But if you guys did the NASB version, please put a colon here. But what? Women?
Like,
You know,
he didn't do any sin, but it was with this,
obviously we're going to
lust.
read it, but even her name is crazy.
What does it mean?
Or look it up real quick. I actually forget. It's not. I might have her confused with somebody else actually. But it's like a bad thing. Or is it like, okay, daughter of an oath. I did have her confused with somebody else.
Yeah.
Anyway though, we'll see what I mean. Even her name is crazy when we get to where she pops up. So it says, Then it happened in the spring. So what time is it?
Spring.
At the time when kings go out to battle. And so if you guys watched the Bible study yesterday, I spoke about this, how, if you see somebody driving somewhere and they're taking certain turns, you can kind of deduce or figure out where this person is going based on the turns and how far they drive and where they're going or what moves they're making, I'll say it that way, right? And so we call that patterns, right? And so patterns reveal pathways. It's like I've seen these patterns before. I might know where this person is going because this seems to be the patterns of this path that leads to this destination, the way this person is moving around. And so in the same sense, patterns are like practices or hobbies, right? And so hobbies or practices reveal somebody's lifestyle or the way they've decided to live, right? And then someone's lifestyle tells you, or the way this person lives tells you who this person is. And so I bring this up because basically people personify destinations. And I said it in a sense because let's put David in the realm of this. The person David, his destination is king. That's what God anointed him to be. So glory to God. When God anointed David, or well, the prophet anointed David by God's command, now David knows his destination. But you have to get from where you are now to that destination. And that's what the Lord helps you to do as you yield to him. And so David knows the path that he needs to take, knowing the destination that he's supposed to end up at. It's a righteous path. And now David's a king and he's a man of war. And so being a man of war, being a king, well, David knows what path he's supposed to take. But we see here in verse 1, in the time where these are the patterns that David was supposed to follow. In the time where kings go out to battle, it says David sent Joab and his servants with him and all Israel, and they brought destruction on the sons of Ammon and besieged Rabbah, but David stayed in Jerusalem. And so there are patterns of the king that David did not follow. When kings go out to war, David stayed home. And so I bring that up because if someone's not following the patterns, you know they're off the path. And if you're off the path, you're not going to meet your destination. Hey, Desiree.
Hey.
And so because David got off the path of being a man of war, David got off the path of being a king, in the season where kings go and do specific things. There are certain practices that kings do in spring, and that practice is go to war. David stayed home. And let's see what becomes of the king because he's made this decision. So verse 2 says, now at evening, or well, at evening time, David got up from his bed and walked around on the rooftop of the king's house. So it's his house, right? He's walking around on the roof of his house. It says, and from the roof, he saw a woman bathing. What woman do you think he saw bathing?
Bathsheba.
Bathsheba was bathing. Come on, you guys. I don't even know if this story was real if I didn't know it was true, because this is too coincidental. How do you see a woman bathing and her name is Bathsheba? That doesn't make... Anyway, it says, and the woman was very beautiful in appearance. So David sent servants and inquired about the woman. And someone said, is this not Bathsheba, the daughter of Eliam, the wife of Uriah the Hittite? Then David sent messengers. Actually, let's stop at the end of verse 3. So here's the thing. We haven't read James yet, but in James chapter 1, it talks about how a man is drawn away and enticed by his own lust. And so if you don't get what that means, there are things that people like. There are temptations that are specific to certain people. And not that one person goes through a temptation that nobody else knows. It's just maybe this person is tempted with something that I might not be tempted by because I never was tempted by that. But he might not be tempted by the same thing that tempts me, so to speak, when it goes case for case. And so I bring this up because we see David likes women. He has like 5 wives right now. And that wasn't a unrighteous thing necessarily in the old covenant. God didn't require this of them to be the husband of one wife, but he does require that of us in Christ. But I bring that up because obviously women are something that David is enticed by. And so when David saw eye to eye something that would cause him to be enticed and drawn away to pursue his lust, did he turn from it or did he inquire of it? And we just read he inquired of it. So he had an opportunity. He was already in the wrong because he wasn't practicing the patterns that a king should be doing, which was go to war. And so if he would have been where he was supposed to be in that season of spring, what we're about to read would have never happened because he would have stayed on the path that was expected of him. Right? And so now David's somewhere where he's not supposed to be. And now he's tempted to do something that he should not do. But because he saw this woman bathing and she looked appealing, David inquires about this woman. And so it says this woman is a married woman. This is the wife of Uriah the Hittite. And I don't want to tell you guys who Uriah is just yet. I want to see if the chapter tells us. But this is diabolical, what we're about to read. So verse 4 says, then David sent messengers and had her brought. And when she came to him, he slept with her. And when she had purified herself from her uncleanness, she returned to her house. Why did she sleep with him? I mean, I can't really tell you. But when the king comes knocking, and David of all people, that's a great temptation for a woman, I would say as well. So verse 5 says, but the woman conceived, so she sent word and informed David and said, I am pregnant. So not only was David not where he was supposed to be during the time, he now has the opportunity to do something that he's not supposed to do, and he takes that opportunity. And now there are consequences to these actions. And I'm not saying a baby is a consequence. A consequence is, there's a negative and a positive connotation to consequence, because a reward is also a consequence, right? So this woman that David slept with, who was a married woman, she now has a child. There's something, not something, but she's conceived. There's a baby growing now. And a woman that doesn't belong to David. But see how they handle the situation. Then David sent word to Joab. Now Joab, if you guys remember, this is the commander of his armies. It says, send me Uriah the Hittite. So check this out. From this verse, we can tell now David's the king. Uriah is the husband of the woman he just slept with. And now this woman's about to have a baby that belongs to David. But he tells Joab, I'm talking to you now, baby. So David tells Joab, the commander of his army, to bring Uriah to him. So let me ask you this. What occupation does Uriah have in Israel? If David asked the commander of his army to send Uriah to David, what do you think Uriah does? If David asked the commander of the army to send me this man, what do you think Uriah does? So what?
Captain? Like the leader of the army?
Yeah, so he asks Joab, the leader of the army, to send
Oh.
me this man. So what do you think that man does in Israel?
Fight.
Fight, yes. And so this man is fighting and putting his life on the line for the king. And the king just slept with his wife. So, or well, not even just the king, but the kingdom. So Uriah comes. It says, when Uriah came to him, David asked about Joab's well-being and that of the people and the condition of the war. So look, there are other men that are where they're supposed to be right now, but David was not. And now David has gotten too deep into something that he should not have even stepped in. So then David said to Uriah, this is verse 8, go down to your house and wash your feet. So Uriah left the king's house, and a gift from the king was sent after him. But Uriah slept at the door of the king's house with all the servants of his lord, and did not go down to his house. This guy Uriah was so honorable. Now, when they informed David, saying Uriah did not go down to his house, David said to Uriah, did you not come from a journey? Why did you not go down to your house? I mean, just consider that. He's not in a place that's like dangerous for him. He could have went home. And David was wondering, why didn't you go to the comfort of your own house? And Uriah said to David, verse 11, the ark and Israel and Judah are staying in temporary shelters, and my lord Joab and the servants of my lord are camping in the open field. Should I then go to my house to eat and drink and to sleep with my wife? He says, by your life and the life of your soul, I will not do this thing. The heart of this man Uriah. He's saying, my brothers in arms are out there in the middle of the field, camping in tents. I'm not about to go and be in the comfort of my own house, because these are patterns of a man of war. Uriah said, hey, this is a season of war. I'm following after the patterns of a man who is going to war. And yeah, you might have removed me from where I should be right now, but I'm not, he's not going to concern himself with being a civilian right now, because there's a time of war. It's time for war. And he's remembering his brothers that are out there fighting right now. He's like, I'm not even about to do this. I'm not about to get out of the mindset. I have a battle that I left and I'm going to get back to. And so obviously David wanted him to sleep with his wife so that it appeared that the child was his own. But Uriah was too honorable for that. So verse 12, then David said to Uriah, stay here today also, and tomorrow I will let you go back. So Uriah remained in Jerusalem that day and the day after. Now David summoned Uriah, and he ate and drank in his presence, and he made Uriah drunk. Look at what David is succumbing to. He's gotten so deep in something that he should not have been in the first place. Now he has to do all this extra stuff to cover it up. He's actually trying to, let's just read it. So David gets Uriah drunk. Why do you think David gets Uriah drunk?
So he doesn't like ask questions?
Or well, remember what we said, why did David want Uriah to go home in the first place?
To sleep with his wife.
Right. And so what do you think Uriah would be more prone to do now that he's drunk?
Oh, right.
See? And in the evening, Uriah went out to lie on his bed with his Lord's servants, and he still did not go down to his house. David's trying so hard. He's getting this man into drunkenness for the sake of covering his own sin. And you guys, we'll see about this, because David messes up 2 more times, I believe, after this. Or well, 1 more time. We already read about the first one being the way he took the Ark of the Covenant back to Jerusalem. But I bring this up because man of God has taught this to me before as well, that when you do not confess your sins and you decide you're going to try to cover it up, fly under the radar, you're going to find out. The Bible does say your sin will surely find you out. And then you're going to experience how the cover up will be worse than the sin itself. The cover up gets worse. My wife and I, we were watching a movie not yesterday, the other day. It was Idris Elba. It was on Netflix movie. It was like from a TV show, and he was like a detective. And there is the main villain. He was manipulating all of these people to help him. The main villain would get some dirt on these people and blackmail them into helping them. And so he had one of the guys that was like really deep on the main character's side. He was supposed to be helping the main characters, and he was helping the villain the whole time. And then the guy finally gets caught, and they're like, "What? What did he have on you? Why did you help him so far?" And the guy says, "Well, you know what? What he had on me actually wasn't even that bad. But because this person was afraid of his own like secret sins, that he didn't want the people that he cared most about finding out what he was up to behind closed doors, he allowed someone to play on that and cause him to do far more nefarious things to the point where now he's accomplice to hundreds or dozens of people dying." I'm still exaggerating, but you guys didn't see the movie. Nevertheless, when he finally gets confronted, all he has to say for himself is, it actually wasn't even that bad. But because he did one thing, now he had to keep covering up this next thing, then cover up the next thing till he was too deep. When at the end of the day, when he got caught, he contemplated it and he thought to himself, you know what that guy could have released about me, if it would have came forward, I would have rather have dealt with that coming forward. I'm telling you guys, you would rather have dealt with coming forward with the sin you did initially, immediately, than have to deal with what happens after you try to cover it up.
And it looks worse trying to cover it up when someone finds out, because they're like, dang, they put so much effort to continue in sin and find different ways to like sin from this one issue.
Yeah.
So now it's like you're just piling more on when you could have just had one thing.
Yeah, and that's what David's doing right now. So in the morning, verse 14, David wrote a letter to Joab and sent it by the hand of Uriah. He had written in the letter the following: "Station Uriah on the front of the line of the fiercest battle and pull back from him, so that he may be struck and killed." David handed this letter to Uriah to deliver to the captain, Joab. David signed a letter of Uriah's death and sent it by the hand of Uriah. Uriah had no idea, because this is an honorable man. He's honored the king. And the king, just imagine that. Let me think of a phrase. David made Uriah the harbinger of his own doom. That's how deep David's getting into this. I'm sending a death letter for you by your own hand. And so, verse 16, so it was as Joab kept watch on the city that he stationed Uriah at the place where he knew there would be valiant men to fight against. And so Joab is the same way. Well, in this case, there was a time where Joab did not obey David or follow through with what David would have wanted to do. And he ended up killing Abner. But you see, Joab is playing his part as well. He's just obeying the king. The men of the city went out and fought against Joab. And some of the people among David's servants fell, and Uriah the Hittite also died. And so David had this man killed because David slept with this man's wife, and the wife had a baby. It's an abortion. No, I'm kidding. Anyway, then Joab sent a messenger and reported to David all the events of the war. He ordered the messenger, saying, "When you have finished telling all the events of the war to the king, then it shall be that if the king's wrath rises and he says to you, 'Why did you move against the city to fight? Did you not know that they would shoot from the wall? Who struck Abimelech the son of the Jerubasheth? Did a woman not throw an upper millstone on him from the wall so that he died at Thebez? Why did you move against the wall?' I think
What are you
Jerubasheth was
talking
he's mentioning when Gideon, his sons were the judges. When it, what? Yeah, Jerubasheth was one of Gideon's sons. He killed all of his brothers. That would have been king, except for one. You remember that? Okay, anyway, that's what he's referencing. So he's trying to, let me finish it, then I'll show you what he's saying. He says, why did you move against the wall? Then you shall say, your servant Uriah the Hittite also died. So David intended for Uriah to die. And then what David hears, he hears about everything that happened during the war. And now David's coming up with some type of ploy, like it was not his idea that the army would move in the way that they moved, so that he could blame somebody else. And he had an alibi. Like, it didn't make sense for you guys to move against the wall. Don't you remember what happened to Jerubasheth with the woman who threw the rock down and killed him from the wall? That wasn't a good idea. Why would you guys do that? That's what David's trying to say. To try to cover up Uriah's death not being his fault. So the messenger departed and came and reported to David everything that Joab had sent him to tell. The messenger said to David, the men prevailed against us and came out against us in the field, but we pressed them as far as the entrance of the gate. Also the archers shot at your servants from the wall, so some of the king's servants died, and your servant Uriah the Hittite also died. Then David said to the messenger, this is what you shall say to Joab. Do not let this thing displease you, for the sword devours one as well as another. Fight with determination against the city and overthrow it, and thereby encourage him. Now when Uriah's wife heard that her husband Uriah was dead, she mourned for her husband. When the time of mourning was over, David sent servants and had her brought to his house, and she became his wife. Then she bore him a son, but the thing that David had done was evil in the sight of the Lord. So at the end of all of that, now David is married to Bathsheba.
Now he has 3 wives?
No, David has like 6 or 7 wives right now.
Oh. Bro, how can you even have so many? Like, what?
He's the king.
Like, do they all live in the same house?
He's the king. He lives in a castle. Check this out. Now remember, Nathan's the prophet during the time.
Do you think he sleeps with all of them at one time?
There's no. Why would I even try to meditate? Why are you meditating?
I'm just like thinking, like, that's crazy. 6 wives? That's a lot.
Baby, I have 1 wife. I'm not gonna marry anybody else.
I know.
You gotta get your mind out of the gutter. So, chapter 12, verse 1. And we'll end this episode after we get done with the whole Bathsheba stuff right now.
Bathsheba.
There's a catharsis at the end of all of this.
What does that mean?
Catharsis is when there's like nothing but bad news, but at the end of it all, there's something to be happy about.
Okay.
It says, then the Lord sent Nathan to David, and he came to him and said, there were 2 men in the city, the one wealthy and the other poor. The wealthy man had a great many flocks and herds, but the poor man had nothing at all except 1 little ewe lamb, which he bought and nurtured. And it grew up together with him and his children. It would eat scraps from him and drink from his cup and lie in his lap, and was like a daughter to him, this little ewe lamb. Now a visitor came to the wealthy man, and he could not bring himself to take any animal from his own flock or his own herd, to prepare for the traveler who had come to him. So he took the poor man's ewe lamb and prepared it for the man who had come to him. So this rich man goes and takes the little that the poor man has, because the rich man didn't want to give up what he had to help somebody else. It says, then David's anger burned greatly against the man, the rich man. And he said to Nathan, as the Lord lives, the man who has done this certainly deserves to die. So keep in mind, what is David's mindset here? The prophet comes up to him, and kings respect prophets. The kings were put in place because of the prophets.
Nathan?
Yeah, David respects Nathan as prophet. But remember, the prophet Samuel anointed David to be king. So prophets are, in my own opinion, are above kings in this manner. And this chapter kind of proves that. But Nathan just pulls up into the king's court, and he just starts talking to the king about these 2 men. And David's not considering that this is a parable. David thinks that Nathan is sharing with him something that has really happened. Like, this is the actual story. These 2 men in the kingdom, this is exactly what just happened. And David goes, what? Man, tell me who this guy is. I'll put him to death. This guy deserves to die. Verse 6. So he must make restitution for the lamb 4 times over, since he did this thing and had no compassion. Nathan then said to David, you yourself are the man. This is what the Lord, the God of Israel, says. So pause. Everything that David did last chapter, you know who saw it?
Probably him.
No. Because remember the last verse of the chapter before, what did it say? David did what in the sight of God?
Evil.
Evil. So all that David did, cunning, smart, wise, deceitful, but he got away with it, didn't he? No, because God saw it. And not only did God see it, God told the prophet Nathan what happened. How does Nathan know? Because God sees it and God speaks to his prophets. You got to be careful in this secret sin, because if God tells somebody, here we go. Nathan tells David, you yourself are this man. This is what the Lord, the God of Israel, says. It is I who anointed you as king over Israel, and it is I who rescued you from the hand of Saul. I also gave you your master's house and put your master's wives into your care, and I gave you the house of Israel and Judah. And if that had been too little, I would have added to you many more things like these. Okay, God's a prosperity preacher. He says in verse 9, why have you despised the word of the Lord by doing evil in his sight? You have struck and killed Uriah the Hittite with the sword. You have taken his wife as your wife, and you have slaughtered him with the sword of the sons of Ammon. Now then, the sword shall never leave your house, because you have despised me and have taken the wife of Uriah the Hittite to be your wife. Pause. And so because God anointed David to be king, there's a certain path, there's certain practices, there's certain patterns that God expects David to follow to reach the destination that God has set for David and to remain at the destination that God has set for David. And so if David gets off the path, he's not just rejecting the path, he's rejecting the person who put him on the path. He's rejecting God. That's why parents get so upset when, I want to put my kid in gymnastics and the kid doesn't want to do gymnastics or just sports in general. I want you to play football. Kid doesn't want to play football. It hurts the parent because the parent is the one that set them on that path, that set them on that track to get them somewhere that could benefit them in the end. I mean, even playing instruments is the same thing. We all have that Asian friend that knows how to play the piano. They'd say they hate it, but their parent put them in that place.
Like that.
Their parent put them on that path to learn the piano because there are benefits to knowing how to play and understand music and instruments and yada yada, right? And so look, this is God's perspective to David. David, I've set you on the path to become a great man, and I would have kept giving you many things. Why have you done this evil? Why have you strayed from the path that I set for you? And now because you killed Uriah with the sword. And it wasn't even David that actually it wasn't David's actual hand that took the life of Uriah. But because David set those things in motion, plotting evil against this man, the blood is on David's hands for the loss of Uriah's life. And now the sword, figurative sword that Uriah died with, God's now cursed David. This sword will never leave your house. Or let me actually read it verbatim. Yeah, he said that. This sword, the sword in verse 10, shall never leave your house, because you have despised me and have taken the wife of Uriah the Hittite to be your wife. Verse 11. This is what the Lord says. Behold, I am going to raise up evil against you from your own household. I will even take your wives before your eyes and give them to your companion, and he will sleep with your wives in broad daylight. Indeed, you did it secretly, but I will do this thing before all Israel and in open daylight. Look at this.
Dang.
The cover-up is worse than the initial sin. It says, and Nathan said, then David said to Nathan, I have sinned against the Lord. Oh, this is still a man after God's own heart, though. David could have been like Saul, got upset, killed the prophet, like Saul killed the priest. But David, he's like, all right, yes, I did wrong. I did wrong against God. And Nathan said to David, the Lord also has allowed your sin to pass. You shall not die. So God forgave his sins. So when we read in the Psalms, Oh, the joy of the man whose sins are forgiven. David knows what it means to have your sins forgiven because David should have died, but God forgave him. Nevertheless, the punishment that David gets for this is crazy. However, since by this deed you have shown utter disrespect for the Lord, the child himself who is born to you shall certainly die. Then Nathan went to his house. I mean, check that out. Nathan wasn't scared to release this information to the king. Nathan did what God told him to do, said what God told him to say. Then Nathan went home. Nobody touched him. So you guys see it, loss of a child. Later, the Lord struck the child that Uriah's widow bore to David, so that he was very sick. David therefore pleaded with God for the child, and David fasted and went and lay all night on the ground. It says the elders of his household stood beside him in order to help him up from the ground, but he was unwilling and would not eat food with them. Then it happened on the seventh day that the child died. And David's servants were afraid to tell him that the child was dead, for they said, "Behold, while the child was still alive, we spoke to him, and he did not listen to us. How then can we tell him that the child is dead, since he might do himself harm?" But when David saw that his servants were whispering together, David perceived that the child was dead. So David said to his servants, "Is the child dead?" And they said, "He is dead." So David got up from the ground, washed, anointed himself, and changed his clothes, and he went into the house of the Lord and worshipped. Then he went to his own house, and when he asked, they served him food, and he ate. So all David's prayer and fasting for the life of this child, it was to no avail. This child's life was lost because of the sins of the father. This was a part of the punishment. This is a very niche case, so let's just keep this in this chapter. You don't see this anywhere else necessarily. But you see, right? We'll read about this in the Kings. Something similar happens to a man where he does evil in the sight of the Lord, and the punishment is not something you can pray against. He's got to be punished. So David finally starts eating. Verse 22, and he said, "While the child was still alive, I fasted and wept. For I said, who knows, the Lord may be gracious to me, and the child may live. But now he has died. Why should I fast? Can I bring him back again? I'm going to him, but he will not return to me." So check that out. David says, "I'm going to the child, but the child is not going to come back to me." So this child went to paradise. This child is, in modern day, we'd say the child is in heaven. And that's what David already knows. So then David comforted his wife Bathsheba, and went into her and slept with her, and she gave birth to a son, and he named him Solomon. This is the catharsis. Now the Lord loved him and sent word through Nathan the prophet, and named him Jedediah for the Lord's sake. And he named him Jedediah for the Lord's sake. So, you know who Solomon is, right?
I forgot who Solomon was. Didn't we already read about him?
No.
There's so many S's. There was Samuel, Saul, Solomon. I don't know who Solomon is.
Okay. I won't spoil it for you, but I'll tell you this, and this should spoil it for you, even though I said I won't. He wrote Proverbs. He wrote many Proverbs.
Oh.
So David has another child with Bathsheba, and this child is Solomon. I guess nobody else here knows. Solomon is the next king.
Oh.
They're the wisest man, the richest man to ever walk the face of the earth. That's Solomon. That's the catharsis. All right, so now Joab fought against Rabbah of the sons of Ammon and captured the royal city. Then Joab sent messengers to David and said, "I have fought against Rabbah." I don't think I want to say Rabbah. "I have fought against Rabbah. I have even captured the city of waters." Is that what Rabbah means? Can you check that out? Or is he saying like I even have the coast of the city?
Okay, let me go.
This is 2 Samuel 12, verse 26.
What?
Yeah, it's right here. No, it just means great. Okay. So verse 28. Now then, gather the rest of the people and camp opposite the city and capture it, or I will capture the city myself and it will be named after me. Wait, did I skip 27? No, so Joab's talking to David and saying, capture the city or I will capture it and name it after me. So David gathered all the people and went to Rabbah and he fought against it and captured it. This is verse 30, then he took the crown of their king from his head and its weight was a talent of gold and it had a precious stone and it was placed on David's head. And he brought out the plunder of the city in great amounts. He also brought out the people who were in it and put some to work at saws, iron picks, and iron axes and made others serve at brickworks. And he did the same to all the cities of the sons of Ammon. Then David and all the people returned to Jerusalem. And here we have it. This is another despicable chapter.
Amnon and Tamar. Those are new people, right?
Yeah, but they're David's children. This is a crazy story, you guys. So I'm gonna leave it here. This is probably one of the shortest episodes we've ever done. But yeah, there's so much to break down in this next story that happens. Like it. It's crazy. Like, I wish I could begin, but we'll pick back up on this Thursday, right?